Welcome to Session 10. I suppose Session 9 may have made compensation much more complex than you realized or even than you wanted to know. You may be saying too much information. Well, hold on, because we are about to complicate things even more. In this session, we will begin our discussion of how to develop a base pay program and then break off and delve into exploring how the compensation funds are created in the first place, and a process I will call the battle for the buck. You know, I keep relating business to your house because I think they really aren't that different. And putting it in that perspective, I believe, also helps us understand business processes better. I won't use your house in this example because I don't really know your house that well, but I'll use mine. And I suspect that your house and my house are not very different in these respects. You know, I have my eye on a new Jeep Wrangler. I love Jeeps, and I've owned several, but I'm void of Jeeps at the moment, and that just doesn't seem right. Now, not a new Jeep, but a used one that will fulfill my Jeep need. I need it. Now, my wife has her eye on a new dishwasher and range. Yes, she already has a dishwasher and a range, but they aren't as modern as she would like, and she needs them too. The obvious solution is to buy the Jeep, rent a trailer, buy her dishwasher and range, load them up and haul them home. Both of our needs are met. Unfortunately, we don't have that kind of money. We only have enough to buy either the Jeep or the appliances this year. Thus begins the battle for the buck. I present my reasons and she presents her reasons, and we decide which need is needed more and which we can afford this year. The losing need may be put off until next year or may not be fulfilled at all. Anyone want to guess who wins that competition? This is where it departs from a business. In business, a higher authority normally hears the arguments and decides, after both parties present their case, which needs are met. In the case of my house, the higher authority is presenting one side of the argument. And you know what? I think I'm really going to enjoy our new dishwasher and range. Maybe at least I'll get some baked cookies, you think? Now, you may smile at this analogy, but such competition does take place in business each year for the limited resource of money. It is the responsibility, or at least should be the responsibility, of human resources to represent the compensation case. What is the proper funding amount for compensation? And if the case is not properly presented to the higher authority, compensation will always be just enough to get by. Compensation will be an expense and never an investment. If you take nothing else from Session 10, understand that the battle for the buck has great consequences for the business. All of those other needs have merit and are important, but pay is important too, for the reasons we've already discussed in Session 9. HR must make the argument and compete effectively, and we'll talk about that in this session. If people have needs, referring back to Session 9, organizations have needs too. We will explore those needs and discuss how those needs help determine the winners and losers in the battle for the buck. And we will discuss how the battle for the buck is fought prior to developing a base pay system to determine the type of system we can need and we can afford. It is also fought each year during the implementation and maintenance of our base pay program or during the budgetary process. Incidentally, I have fought this battle for the buck many, many times in various organizations over the years. I have also fought it many, many times over the years at my house, and I can assure you I have been much more successful in the battle in organizations than at my house. And I really do like our new range and dishwasher. Welcome to session 10. Now that we have established beyond a shadow of a doubt that the universe is totally dependent on how we manage compensation, let us turn our attention to how do we manage compensation. As a human resource specialist responsible for compensation, the company hands you a barrel of money each year to dispense any way you choose. As a manager in any department, the human resource specialist in turn hands you a smaller but significant barrel of money each year to dispense any way you choose. Now that that's done, we can move on to other less important things. Wouldn't it be easy if that was all there was to it? Unfortunately, those nasty issues such as responsibility and leadership, strategic planning, equity, fairness, need, etc. get in the way. Oh, and one other nasty concept called consistency. You see, we need a plan to dispense this money that is perceived to be fair and equitable, but also is consistent across the company. In short, we need a plan to dispense the funds. A plan that will make everyone happy about everything all the time. Simple, right? Do you want to surrender yet? We need a plan to manage compensation and determine how we are going to spread our money around each year. And we need to determine how much to pay everyone. Obviously, we don't want to pay everyone the same. So how do we determine who gets paid the most? Once again, obviously, the most valuable positions should get paid more. I'm sorry, but in our business of S&C helpers, an electronic technician is more valuable than an administrative assistant. But how much more valuable is it, and how much more should we pay? Where do we start with this plan? Well, the following website gives us a good outline to follow to develop our compensation plan. The steps for establishing a base pay program according to this website are job analysis, job evaluation, market analysis, salary structure development, performance management process, merit increase administration, and salary management. Now, we will explore each of these steps in various detail. Many of the steps will be discussed using website references supplemented by additional lecture material. The first two steps, job analysis and job evaluation, will be covered this week. Market analysis will be covered next week, and so forth. Some steps will be covered rather quickly, and we will dwell on others when the website supplements aren't sufficient or other real-world issues require more detail. Hang in there, and I'll try not to go down too many side roads without giving an adequate turn signal. If you feel you're getting lost, or as we used to say in the Army, disoriented, give me a shout. We will pause and take a look at the map to make sure everyone is on the same road. Our goal is that you will understand and hopefully be able to develop a basic pay compensation system in the future. In this session, I will split the material into two parts. One part will cover job analysis and job evaluation. These steps obviously represent an important part of determining a base pay system. However, I believe these steps leave out a critical step that must be considered before, during, and continually after we have developed our plan for distributing our barrel of money. Where does that barrel of money come from, and how do we determine how big the barrel is? That will be the topic towards the end of this lecture. Let's now turn our attention briefly to job analysis and job evaluations. Our first step in developing a base pay system is to conduct a job analysis. To quote the website, the first step in determining a base pay program is to understand the jobs and their requirements. This process requires writing job descriptions, which require supervisory input. Job descriptions are written statements that describe reporting relationships, duties, responsibilities, and qualifications for positions. Job descriptions have many purposes and are used in recruitment, staffing, training, performance management, and compensation decisions. End quote. How do we do a job analysis? Here are some explanations and some tips in deploying some methodologies for conducting job analysis and job evaluations. This website merely gives a quick summary of job analysis methods. How do we determine what people do so we can in turn write a job description? The following website does a good job of defining and describing job analysis and job evaluation. Pay particular attention to the differentiation between analysis and evaluation. Also pay attention to the methods available for conducting job evaluations. You will likely run into the point factor system in many organizations, but the other methods are often used as well. Of course, also pay attention to the benefits and the limitations. There are literally hundreds, maybe thousands of different formats for job descriptions. The next website offers some sample job descriptions and also some templates for creating job descriptions. Pay particular attention to the examples so that you can see what a job description may look like, and also pay attention to the templates. The first part of the website also offers some good information about the importance and use of descriptions. Job descriptions are not hard. They're actually boring, but they are essential to understanding the skills needed and responsibilities vested in various jobs. Using job descriptions as a base, we can start evaluating jobs. Remember, first comes the job analysis, and from that, we can do job evaluations. The above website offers some detail on each method of job evaluation, but it also offers some great references to software and additional examples and templates for job descriptions. Once again, take a look at the methods and the uses of job evaluations. This is a very useful website, and we'll probably use this in some other parts of our discussion in future weeks. As you can see, job analysis and job evaluation are very closely related. Job analysis is documenting or writing down what employees do. Job evaluation is putting a value on those duties. Job analysis is required to perform job evaluation. And their worth certainly has a great influence in what we as an organization are willing to pay for a job. Job evaluation involves comparison of jobs within the organization and can be a very time-consuming process. The value of a job may vary depending on the organization. Jobs are not always compared to the market to determine worth, although that is a common way to determine the worth of a job. Let me illustrate with an example. When I worked at RCA Corporation, we valued electrical engineers highly, and we paid them well because we didn't want anyone else to steal them. An engineering manager called me one day and stated that one of his engineers was just offered a job making over $20,000 more per year than we were paying him. He questioned if our job value was right. I checked our market resources and surveys and determined that the engineer in question was really paid at the high end of the market range. An additional $20,000 per year was way out of our, and as far as I could tell, anyone else's range. I inquired as to the company that made the offer and discovered that the company was a very small company and also had only 2 or 3 engineers. We had hundreds. To that small company, a highly qualified electrical engineer was almost priceless. They didn't care what the market said. They were going to pay what was necessary to acquire that engineer. Obviously, electrical engineers were much more highly valued in that company than ours, and for good reason. We wished the engineer well, congratulated him on his new job and his new company. The same job may have very different values in different organizations. It should be pointed out that we really have the option of administering a job evaluation system ourselves, or we can purchase such activity from a number of sources. There are consulting groups that will provide assistance in developing the job analysis and the job evaluation process, and then provide assistance in implementation and subsequently turn the process over to the organization to maintain. I have done both and probably prefer to purchase at least part of the evaluation process. One group who provides extensive services in this area, not to indulge in an advertisement, is the Hay Group. I won't provide it here, but you can take a look at their website and see the extensive array of services they provide. One advantage of using a large consulting group for job analysis and job evaluation is that the system is consistent over a large number of organizations and provides a good comparison from one company to the other. These organizations are massive and work with a lot of different companies. It also provides some historical perspective to pay and compensation. The obvious disadvantage is that such services are not free. In fact, they are rather expensive. Developing and implementing our own job evaluation program has the advantage of being much less expensive. However, a job evaluation program can be very complex and time-consuming to develop, and it also takes a certain amount of expertise. Another disadvantage of developing such a program on your own is objectivity. There is something to be said for the objectivity of an outside company evaluating your jobs. When I evaluated jobs through a company-developed process, there was always pressure from management to make sure that certain jobs attained a certain grade level and a certain worth. Outside companies can forestall such pressure and influence. Developing a base pay system is only part of the problem and part of the responsibility of HR professionals. The base pay system will tell us how to effectively disperse pay and pay increases, but how do we determine how much pay is available to disperse? So let's put this problem into perspective. Let's assume we have our job analysis completed and our job descriptions are developed. We have an idea of the worth of our jobs as well. We know we have money to spend and distribute. If we have an established compensation program, our problem is how do we distribute the money this year? If we are developing a compensation program, the problem is how do we spend the money this year and every subsequent year? These are important decisions. What information must we have and what must we consider to make these decisions? We know we are going to spend money. We have no choice but to pay our employees. But do we just spend or do we spend wisely? From my perspective, to spend wisely, we need to consider 3 factors. First, it's employee needs or motivation. In the previous session, we discussed Maslow and Hertzberg to give some insights into what motivates employees. We may find our compensation program or pay increase distribution is not particularly motivating, but we definitely don't want it to be demotivating. We also discussed employee perceptions and expectations. What employees need determines their expectations, and their perceptions determine if those needs are being met. So our pay increase distribution or compensation program must consider the needs of employees. Second, we must consider what our competitors in the labor market are doing. The outside market, to an extent, determines employee perception of our compensation plan or our distribution plan. It is about employee perception of adequacy and fairness. Our third consideration is about company need. What are the company needs? What can the company afford? And what the company needs and can afford to a large extent determines how much of the scarce resource money will be allocated to the compensation programs. The world is good when employee needs are met and the outside market is level or lower than our expenditures on compensation, and there is plenty of money to meet company needs. It's very difficult to reach that scenario. Before we look at the outside market, though, let's stick with the discussion of needs and motivation that we started in the last session. From the last session, we know about people needs. That's Maslow and Hertzberg. But what about company needs? What can our company afford? The basic needs of most organizations, profit or nonprofit, are, as I see it, growth, stability, return for investors and stakeholders, money, and profits. Now, growth is an obvious need. Maybe you have, but I have never seen an organization that didn't want to grow. Organizations want to grow in size, expertise, influence, power, and they want to grow financially. All organizations strive for stability. They want to offer stability for customers, vendors, employees, and other stakeholders. All organizations want to create a return for investors or stakeholders. For-profit organizations want to provide financial return for stockholders or customers, etc. Not-for-profit organizations want to return a service to their customers, communities, etc. You may now be saying that I have money on this list twice. One is called profit, and the second is called money. We see profit and money are different things. All organizations must make money to sustain operations. Money to pay employees, to pay the electric bill, to pay the mortgage, etc. Profits are realized after all expenses are paid, and most organizations measure success by profits, not just making money. And money and profits are by far the strongest motivators for organizations. And there is nothing wrong with that. I don't really want to work for a company that doesn't highly value money and profits. A company generally makes profits and money in two ways: from sales and from not spending money. We all understand how an organization makes money and profits from sales or services rendered. But making money and profits from not spending money is another avenue that is often overlooked and underestimated. To end the year with more money, don't spend it, keep it. That works for us at home, and it also works for all organizations. Translated, if we want our monies to supply to increase so that our profits increase, we either need to sell more or spend less, and less may be spending less on compensation. And this brings us to what I call the battle of the buck. The battle of the buck simply means that various entities within the organization are in competition for those precious and scarce resources called money. After expenses are met and the business is supported, how much is left and how and where do we spend it? It's a battle that takes place every year in all organizations at budget time. And HR must fight for the proper compensation level in competition with other internal entities. We know we will spend money on compensation, but how much? Will our expenditure make our people happy or angry? And in addition, what does the organization need as well? Let me illustrate this point by taking you back to our company, S&C Helpers. And here's a summary of the company just to refresh your memory. Remember, we have two divisions, the Home Projects Division and the Technical and Electronic Division. And as you can see here, this is an explanation of each, and I'll give you a second to read through that. In addition, we have critical employees in each one of these divisions, and our company employs several other people to provide support for our core business endeavors: accountants, administrative assistants, HR professionals, marketing people, etc. The composition and the payroll consist of 15 employees in home projects, 10 in technical and electronic help, and an annual revenue of $15 million. Average pay for home projects is $50,000 a year per employee. Average pay for technical electronic employees, $65,000. Total annual payroll is $3,750,000, or 25% of the annual revenue. Now, we talked last time about a 3% increase, and that amounted to $112,500 that we were going to spend on that increase. And I pointed out how if you divide it equally among all employees, the percentages do not equal out. And is that an effective use of our $112,500? We would spend $112,500, and likely the technical and electronic employees would not be very happy with a 2.4% increase. Well, let's take this a step further. As I said in that previous session, we used the example of a budgeted 3% annual increase of base payroll and yields an expenditure of $112,500 to dispense among employees. And that's all we have, correct? Well, not so fast. Let's ask ourselves, that is the number given to us by our friends in finance. They said we can spend 3% or $112,500. Are the people in finance attuned to the nuances of the labor market? Are the finance people attuned to the people needs of the organization? Are the finance people advocates for the employees? Probably not, because they're not paid to be attuned and to be advocates of those entities. The finance people are paid to make the books balance. Who in the organization is attuned to those things? HR professionals are responsible for those important considerations. Get ready to fight the annual battle for limited resources called money. How will employees perceive a 3% across the board increase? It may make some happy. It may make some sad. It may also make everyone angry. So maybe 4% would make everyone happy. That's more than the finance people said we could spend. And that's $150,000 rather than $112,500. But wouldn't it be silly to spend $112,500 to make everyone angry and unmotivated when we could spend an extra $37,500 more and make everyone happy? Isn't it worth the fight to get the extra 1% and invest it effectively rather than merely spending $112,500 for nothing? Correct that. It's less than nothing. It's actually harmful to the organization. You have just spent $112,500 to shoot yourself in the foot. What can we afford and what we need are important considerations. Now, another part of that consideration on a higher level is what else does the organization need to invest in this year? It's not just about compensation. Remember, we are competing for a barrel of money. We are competing with the need or desire to create new products, new marketing ideas, the need for new facilities, the need to meet perceived and anticipated financial commitments and liabilities, and on and on. And all of these may, and probably do, represent great ideas or real needs. But the pot does have a bottom, and the funds are limited. How much does our organization allocate to compensation and employees, and how much is allocated to other business needs? It's a competition. It's a battle. And to win that competition, we must convince others in the organization that pay issues are more important than their needs. And to do that, we must, of course, convince people first that there will be a positive outcome from our compensation investments. On the other hand, we must convince people that there will be a negative outcome to our not making a specific compensation investment. Let's assume S&C wants to start a new division. Leadership has determined that we can increase revenue by conducting training classes in our already existing field of expertise. Classes on how to install a dishwasher, how to build a shed, how to choose high-end sound and video equipment, how to select and install the proper video equipment for your room, etc. We will call this division the Home Education Division. The training sessions may be public classes that our current employees conduct during their downtime or classes conducted by other contracted instructors. The classes may teach do-it-yourselfers how to do what we normally sell, or it may supplement our business by teaching people the importance and high value of high-end sound and video equipment in the home. We may even be able to contract with our current retail partners, Lowe's and Home Depot and Sears, etc., to be their training and education arm. The potential for this new division is to tap into a part of the market we are missing, those do-it-yourselfers who need more expertise, and to convince those who would hire our services anyway that expanding their living area or installing new audio-video products or computer equipment is desirable. Such a business expansion project may eat up a lot of money from the budget in all areas. We must invest in building space for classrooms, technical equipment to support the classroom environment, instructors, marketing activities to create and cultivate the market, and much, much more. But the future potential could improve our business from a financial and security standpoint. So, should we then tell employees, sorry, no increase this year. We are planning to expand the business and need every penny to fund the expansion? I doubt if employees would cheer that decision. They may be willing to accept 3% instead of 4% to see the company grow, but accepting 0 is unacceptable. After all, employees have their personal growth needs too. I've had managers tell me, times are hard. People will understand no increase. People will understand that business is not good. They will accept 0 increase. Will they? It depends. If everyone gets 0 increase except managers who get an increase, I guarantee you people won't understand. If our organization grants 0 increases, but our competitors in the marketplace or in the industry grant more than 0, there's a good chance people won't understand either. But you know what? I have been in organizations where we gave 0 increases. No one received an increase, and employees understood. The economy was in a shambles and business was terrible. We worked hard not to have layoffs during the year, and executive management accepted a decrease in pay. Employees understood. Now, no one liked it, but everyone understood it. A perception of equity fosters a great deal of understanding. A perception of inequity fosters many, many more unpleasant perceptions. Much of creating those perceptions really comes down to communication. What we can afford and what we need is not just a dollar issue. It's a communication issue as well. And it must be a careful and honest communication. Employees need to know that times are hard, but realistically, they probably already understand that. What they really need to know is that the current sacrifice has the potential to lead to better times. The sacrifice that they are making will help in the future. So how much can S&C afford to grant to compensation and still meet the needs of expanding the business by creating another division that will ultimately provide more funds in future years? What business needs trump compensation, or what business needs are subservient to perceived compensation needs? That's the battle. Entering the battle ill-prepared and hoping everyone knows compensation is important is foolhardy and unprofessional. The HR professional must take a stand and defend a position. How do we know what the stand is? Do we stand for 3%, 4%, or 5%? We know that granting too little is harmful, but granting too much may be equally harmful in that other needs of the business go unmet. Just as in most other things in life, we leave the battle a winner by entering the battle prepared and ready. So what is needed internally by the company is a complex issue that pits many different needs and ideas against one another, vying for the limited resource of money. Determining what we need and what in terms of compensation is also needed is a complex issue. It is one that squarely falls on the shoulders of HR and is primarily based on perceived perceptions of employees. What do we think employees need? What do we think employees want? What are the employee expectations for base pay increases? Why these questions? Because those expectations and perceptions are largely going to determine the effectiveness of our expenditure. Is it going to be an investment or an expense? We are guessing to a large extent on what our employees will think. Is there a right or wrong answer? You bet there is, but often the rightness or wrongness of the answer is not apparent until after the decision is made and implemented. That's the tricky part. That 3% we are granting as an increase is not determined with ease. It is a careful, deliberate decision on the part of the organization. Now that's for an increase to an already established pay system. How about implementing a new pay system or dramatically changing our current pay system? Developing a new base pay system is an equally difficult decision involving the same limited resource called money. The difference is that arguing for an annual increase budget deals with much factual data in addition to speculations about employee perceptions on a very short-term basis, normally 1 year. The same territory must be engaged in constructing a new base pay system, except the data is not factual, but more abstract. We are anticipating business expenses and business needs and revenues in the future for many years. We are trying to anticipate the perceptions of employees during both good and bad times. It is a battle for the compensation share of the current and future budgets, and it is a battle that HR must fight. And to a certain extent, an appropriate share of the budget must be established before an organization can decide on the type of base pay system and incentive program to adopt. Just like in regular life, if you have $1,000 to spend, no sense looking for new Cadillacs. But if you have $500,000 to spend, no sense looking at used Fords. What is the internal environment? What is our culture? What do we want our culture to be in the future? What type of base pay and incentive system do we need to support where we want to go? And what can we afford? I guess what I'm saying in a long-winded manner is the internal environment, particularly financially and culturally, represents a very important step in developing and maintaining our pay programs. A step that can't be skipped and one that HR can't relegate to others, such as finance professionals. It's HR's battle to win or lose. So what do we do to prepare ourselves for the battle? How do we determine where to make our stand? How do we determine that mythical line where on one side employees are happy and on the other side they're angry? One method of determining and justifying our compensation needs within the organization is to look to the outside. It's that keeping up with the Joneses thing again. What does the rest of the world look like? Remember, the rest of the world, particularly job applicants, are comparing our company to other organizations. At S&C, when we must look for new skilled and semi-skilled employees to staff our new division, and they in turn will be looking at our competitors and comparing us to them. Where do we stand in the competitive marketplace when we compare our salaries and benefits to other organizations? Are we the highest paying company? Are we the lowest? Where do we think we can afford to be? At Nestle, we decided that from the lowest to the highest, we would maintain a position about 2/3 up the scale from a local perspective. We didn't want to be the highest, but we wanted to be among the highest. In our local community, Goodyear Company was the highest paying organization, and Corning Glass was number 2. We were probably 3 or 4. This position allowed us to compete favorably in recruiting hourly and administrative employees and also kept turnover to a minimum. This also represented a level of pay that allowed us to allocate the proper amount of funds to compensation and continue to successfully support the other organization needs and allow for anticipated growth. In addition, this market position satisfied employees, so presumably maintaining this position would represent the mythical line marking employee satisfaction versus dissatisfaction. After establishing that position, we merely needed to keep pace with the market each year. If the market granted an average of 4% and we granted 2%, we could expect dissatisfaction unless there was a good reason for the discrepancy and that discrepancy was fully communicated. If the market granted a 4% increase and we granted an 8% increase, we were probably wasting money unless there was a good business reason supporting that discrepancy. That is not to say that we must always follow the market exactly, but we should be in the ballpark. We may also choose to lead the market, but to lead, we must also know where the market and the rest of the market participants are located. With this example, it should be obvious that the first step in determining where to make our stand in the battle for the buck is to determine our comparison to the outside market, both in terms of where we stand and also where the market is going in the current year. For S&C, we need to know where our competitors in the labor market stand in comparison with us. How much do they pay electronic technicians? How much do they pay their carpenters? These are valued positions in our company. Are we in danger of losing these valuable employees to competitors due to low pay? Are we paying too much when compared to the market? I realize I've hammered this topic of determining the size of funds allocated to compensation. I've probably said the same thing in 10 different ways, but I'm passionate about this responsibility and ensuring that it is a carefully thought out decision. What an organization can afford in compensation is related to many other complex business considerations, both internal and external to the company. I am equally passionate about the managerial and HR role in this important decision. I just wanted you to understand a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes. Compensation is not just developing a fancy plan to distribute funds. How the funds are determined is also a critical business decision. You can have the best looking car in the world, analogy to base pay plan. But if it continually strands you in the wilderness and makes you and everyone around you unsatisfied, it is less than worthless. But an ugly, less expensive car that is dependable and meets everyone's needs, well, spend what money you have wisely. Invest your funds. In our steps for developing a base pay system, determining the outside market is step 3, or it's called market analysis. And we will start our discussion of that in the next session.